What's new in Revit 2011 products? My name is Harlan Brum. I'm the Global Technical Lead for Revit Architecture and Autodesk Product Support. In this class, we'll talk about the common questions customers may encounter with the 2011 release of Revit products. We'll talk about how the new features will impact users you support in graphics generation, rendering, and finally work sharing. Let's start by talking about graphics hardware and Revit 2011 products. For Revit 2011 products, we now have a certified graphics hardware list. Other products like AutoCAD Inventor have had certified hardware lists for a while now. Revit has this new for 2011. Having certified graphics hardware is important for Revit 2011 as many new features will use this certified graphics hardware. On Autodesk.com, when the product ships, a list of certified graphics hardware for Revit products will be available. Hardware acceleration is the mechanism in which the graphics card will use to display these features. A number of features will not function with hardware acceleration turned off. The new realistic views, which display realistic materials and textures in a 3D view, will not show and be available without hardware acceleration turned on. Also, ambient occlusion, the new effect for 3D views to create soft shadows around corners and edges, will not appear even if it's been enabled. You may also experience very slow performance when drawing a mechanical view. This is due to hidden line generation, and without a certified graphics card, the performance of drawing those views will be severely affected. When displaying an underlay in any view, some artifacts may display on the screen that are not intended. And finally, you will have slower average performance of any project without hardware acceleration turned on. Overall, having a certified graphics card with Revit 2011 is an important first step to make sure you're getting the full use out of the software. It's important to note that if you're on a 32-bit machine and enable the 3 GB switch, hardware acceleration will be turned off by default on that machine. Certain graphics cards and the 3 GB switch can cause conflicts. You will be able to enable the 3 GB switch on these machines and hardware acceleration if you need, but you'll have to go into the options dialog box and do it. You will receive a warning message that enabling the 3 GB switch and hardware acceleration at the same time within Revit could result in a crash. The second piece that's new for 2011 is a new updated rendering engine. This includes updated materials. That includes Protein 2 materials, which AutoCAD and Max all share. It includes additional functionality to include a background image while rendering. Also new for 2011 is there will no longer be a rendering processor limit, as in Revit 2010, where we were limited to 4 cores. Revit 2011 will no longer have this limit. Also, new FBX functionality in Revit may cause problems with backwards compatibility with older versions of 3D Studio Max. FBX 2011 to Max 2010 will result in no materials, no textures, no lights, and only geometry being displayed in 3D Studio Max 2010. Taking your Revit file from 2011 and exporting it to FBX, you should be using 3D Studio Max 2011 in order to get the full functionality. The new rendering engine may also result in other unforeseen challenges while working within the application. Now that all materials are shared across Max and AutoCAD and Revit, the dialogues within the material editor have been modified to reflect the changes in all products. The changes in the rendering engine are important to note as you move from 2010 to 2011. The last item we should talk about is worksharing for Revit 2011 products. Worksharing for 2011 has been rewritten behind the scenes, and these changes may affect things like save to central and creating new central files or creating new local files. It's something to be aware of when you're talking with customers. Most of these changes are not visible to the user themselves, but behind the scenes, a number of changes have taken place. There are a few features to look at with regard to work sharing that you may want to discuss with customers. The first is now we have control over the worksets of a linked model. In visibility and graphics, you can now look at the linked model's worksets and control whether or not they are visible. Also, new for Revit 2011 is personal 3D views. When a user within a local file creates a new 3D view, Revit will automatically append the user's username to the three-dimensional view. This allows each user to have their own 3D view within the model so that they don't run into problems with borrowing elements or manipulating geometry within that 3D view. Finally, because of the back-end changes, you should notice some sync with central performance increases. That's not to say it'll happen all the time. However, with these new changes behind the scenes, sync to central performance should increase. Today, we talked about how the new features of Revit 2011 products will impact your users regarding graphics generation, graphics hardware, the rendering engine in Revit 2011 products, and finally, work sharing. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot today.